Hello, hello, hello. This is Keela Bryson with Live Live, our weekly call where we meet up to receive motivational, inspirational, and activational strategies for those challenging and changing life moments. I hope everyone had a great holiday weekend. I know I sure did, hanging out with family and having good fellowship and food and getting a little bit of rest in. Tonight's call, we're going to go ahead and get started with it. I don't want to hold you too long. Tonight, we're going to talk about the subject is don't drift in neutral any longer. And this is a subject that's relevant to what a lot of young adults tend to experience in their journey to maturity and full-blown adulthood. And so we want to touch on a couple of issues to try to motivate you guys this week to give it some thought and just to do a quick check to make sure you're not in a place of where you're drifting. Or if you know someone who's drifting in neutral, maybe you can share this message with them and help them to, realize that if they continue to drift, they will end up in a place that they don't want to be. The purpose of the Live Live call is to provide coaching and mentoring and encouragement and motivation geared towards successful dating and relationships, money management issues, and self-empowerment issues for our young adults. We have so many out here that a lot of them desire to do better and to have a better life for themselves, but they may not know how to get there. They may not have the tools. They may have come from an environment where it hasn't always been as positive as it should be. And when I see a young adult that has that desire to do better, it touches my heart, to have a desire but don't have the tools or that support on how to get to that desired place. And so this is why this call has been designed to create a non-judgmental environment for people to call in and just receive information. And from time to time, I'll open up the lines to take on questions and just to receive any feedback from any caller who wish to share. Okay, let's dive into tonight's topic. Tonight, as I said, we're talking about don't drift in neutral any longer. And when you think about the word drifting, I'm sure we've all seen on television before maybe a boat that's shipwrecked and lost all power, and as a result, it began to just drift. No specific destination, no control over the direction of the boat because there's no power, and so, or there's no rows to help row the boat to the direction that the folks in the boat want to go in. And so if we're not careful, our lives can be that way. We just drifting as young people because you're young, and I know we've all been young, if there are any adult callers on the line. And when you're at that age, you think you know everything. And unfortunately, to a certain extent, you may know something, and then to another extent, you don't know what you think you know. But drifting, to drift, what does that mean, to drift? To drift means to be carried slowly by a current of air, water, or force of circumstance. Now, when you look at that, just that first definition of it, to be carried slowly, anything that's drifting is not moving it's not speeding. It's not moving at a fast pace. It's not another antonym to the word drift is to fly. Okay, so you're not flying, you're not speeding, you're just slowly moving along. And we know that sometimes in order to get to a certain destination, you've got to have some speed in order to get there by a certain amount of time, or else the trip becomes laborious and frustrating, and at some point you may decide to give up and turn around and go back where you came. And so we don't want to be in a drifting mode, and we have to be careful about moving slowly, and we have to be careful about letting anything and everything carry us away. Because the second part of the definition says that it's carried slowly by air, water, or force of circumstance. That means the elements outside is carrying this particular boat. And we're going to use a metaphor of a boat, which will symbolize your life. And if we are drifting, that means we're not focused on a destination. The wind is just taking us wherever it desires, or the air, the water, or the force of circumstance. Sometimes in our personal lives, we can be going through a real hard time in our life. We can have a real catastrophic situation to attack our lives, and as a result of it, it can be so drastic it can hit us so hard until we just begin to drift. Excuse me. And there are many, many folks out here who have begun to drift because of force of circumstance. It could be a death of a loved one, a divorce. It could be the loss of some material possession, a job. There are a lot of people unemployed right now. And as a result of the repeated unemployment and people are applying for jobs and not being called for interviews or not being hired, and that can be such a force of a disappointment until people begin to drift and give up hope. And the longer we drift, the more we're likely to give up hope and find ourselves in places that we never dreamed we would be in. A lot of people drift to the extent of becoming alcoholics, drug addicts, abusive, homeless, and so on. And so drifting is dangerous. And when we realize that we're moving slowly and that we're being carried by air and water and the force of circumstance, which that can be negative influences from your peers. It can be temptations that are not healthy, and you find yourself yielding to them. When you're drifting, you're just floating along, not with a particular destination in mind. You're just going with the flow. You're just wandering. And when you're wandering around, that's like being lost. And so we don't want to be a group of people who drift, because there are dangers in it. And the longer you stay in that mode, the more dangerous it is, because when you're drifting, you're not controlling anything. You don't have control over the steering wheel to guide your boat or your life in the direction that it needs to go in. And so we don't want to do that any longer, because we have purpose, and there are things that God has assigned us to do that we need to be busy taking care of. The next word that I want to focus on is neutral, because the topic is entitled, Don't Drift in Neutral Any Longer. Okay, well, we define drift. Okay, we know what that is. Okay, so what about neutral? I know many of us at one point who've driven a car before have put the car in neutral. And most times when we've done that, it was probably when there was some snow and ice on the ground. And when we find ourselves on snow and ice, a lot of times to keep the car from spinning out of control, we know to throw the car in neutral. Now, neutral, when something is in neutral, it means it's out of gear. Okay, it's not in drive, it's not in reverse, it's just out of gear, and you can press on the gas pedal and the car won't go anywhere because it's in neutral, it's out of gear. Neutral means to deviate from a set course. And so, in other words, when we're in neutral, it means we're out of gear. And when you're out of gear, when your life is out of gear, you can't go forward, you can't go backwards. You're just sitting there, you're just stuck. And you deviate from a set course. And whether you realize it or not, there is a set course assigned for each of our lives. And in order to get there, to that set course, and in order to fulfill that set course, we cannot be drifting in neutral. And so tonight's subject is a call to unction us to examine our lives, examine our goals, and to evict the spirit of drifting in neutral. Because if we're going to accomplish and fulfill that set course for our lives, we cannot drift in neutral any longer. All right, so now that we've defined what drifting is and what neutral is, you may be thinking, okay, so how does one end up in neutral? Um, how does a person get there? Have you been out and you've seen people and you've talked to them for a few minutes and you can tell that they're drifting in neutral? Um, they just look like don't have any direction. They just lost and they're living their life in a manner of whatever happens, happens, whatever goes, goes, and I'm just going to deal with it. I'm not going to try to guide this boat or my life in a direction that's greater or better than what I'm experiencing. So a lot of people end up in neutral by their thoughts. And the thought life, we hear this over and over. Our thought life is very important that we have the right thought life. Thoughts, negative thoughts, incorrect thoughts can cause us to end up drifting in neutral. Because most of the time when the actions that we carry out in our daily lives are a result of the thoughts that we've deposited within ourselves. And when if you've ever grown up in a negative environment, or if you know anyone who's grown up in a negative environment, you have witnessed that it has affected their thought life. And that environment has been so negative until that person cannot almost break free from that negative thought life to break out of drifting in neutral. Maybe it came in the form of a parent being negative, verbally abusing that young person, telling them they'll never amount to anything, or you're just like your dad, or you're just like your mom. Or, and as a result, that child ended up believing what the parent has said, and those thoughts began to grow and grow and grow. And as a result, that child ends up drifting in neutral because they think, well, I'm not going to be any better than what my mom or my grandmom or my uncle said about me. And so they begin to develop the next reason or cause of how a person ends up drifting in neutral is their belief system. Because once those thoughts are deposited in a person, then they begin to develop a belief system about themselves. And I'm here to tell you many, many, many children have been introduced to a negative, poisonous belief system, and it's carrying over into their adulthood to the point they almost can't help themselves because what you believe is your reality, and once something is your reality, it's almost impossible to try to retrain and renew your mind with a new thought, a new belief system. And so we have to protect our thoughts, and we have to surround ourselves with people who are giving off positive thoughts, even if they're giving off thoughts and information that seems so far-fetched from what we were raised in. If it's something healthy and they got the fruit and the lifestyle to support what they're declaring, then you may want to pay attention to that person. Because if you don't, then you may end up drifting in neutral, okay? So how does a person end up drifting in neutral? Their thoughts, negative thoughts or incorrect thoughts that have been deposited in, and once those thoughts turn into that person's belief system. And then the third reason is fear. Fear will cause a person to end up drifting in neutral. And fear will slow you down. Fear will cause you to be paralyzed and be carried away by the air, the wind, the force of circumstance. Fear will cause you to get out of gear, because if you're going to go forward and accomplish and fulfill your assignment or whatever it is you're trying to accomplish in life, you got to get in gear. You got to get in drive. You got to get in go mode. And fear is one of those things that will cause a person to drift in neutral because they're afraid. And we know that fear is terror. It's traumatizing. It's when you're afraid, I mean, you can't hardly think straight if you're really, really fearful about something. And so we have to begin to develop and work on confidence and build up ourselves so that we're no longer fearful if we're going to drift out of neutral. Because a scary person is a dangerous person. A scary person, a fearful person will hurt you and themselves. And so we cannot be fearful if we're going to accomplish anything. We've got to overcome it. And we got to do what it is that we're trying to accomplish in spite of the fear. Because if not, we'll always be drifting in neutral, and we'll be looking on the sidelines at others who are just going on about their business, accomplishing their goals, fulfilling their assignment, making progress, and just, taking the world by storm. And whether you realize it or not, most people who have accomplished anything significant, they had to overcome fear. Fear is a spirit, and fear is a choice. And we can decide if we want to let fear overtake us or whether we just going to overpower it and do it anyway. And the fourth reason how a person can end up in neutral is they choose to do it. And a lot of times they choose to do it based upon their personal experiences, their history of, that they've grown up in, the history of their life, the environment that they've grown up in. And so as a result of all that information, all that historical data, all their personal experiences, sometimes people can just choose to do it because, they feel like I don't have a choice. And so when a person decides that they want to drift in neutral, then it's people like me that go out and try to encourage people and to change their mind and to expose them to their own potential and show them that they can be more than what they see for themselves. Because if you're going to drift out of neutral, you've got to see yourself getting out of neutral. You've got to try this new thing of stepping beyond your negative thoughts and your belief system and stepping beyond the fear. It may be uncomfortable at first, but if you continue to step out there anyway, you'll begin to get courage over this thing. You'll get the victory over it. And then that way you can move on and accomplish some things, because there's no need in existing in this life and just being in misery because, you're drifting in neutral. It's a fulfilling, it feels good when you accomplish something. And most people that I know that are not fulfilling anything positive or good, or they're drifting in neutral, they don't feel good. They feel tired. They feel hopeless, helpless. They don't feel worthy. And as a result, they end up drifting into behaviors and activities that are illegal or questionable or dangerous or unhealthy. And so we've got to protect ourselves from this and people. If you're in an environment of drifters, you need to break free, because I tell you, young adults, it is a temptation. If you're hanging around a bunch of drifters, it's going to spread to you if you're not strong enough, because it's contagious. But if you put yourself in an environment of a bunch of go-getters, a bunch of people that's in gear and on the move, then you will get inspired and motivated to get in gear and be on the move. But it all starts with your thought life, your belief system, overcoming fear, and then choosing to get out of drifting in neutral and begin to move forward. The next step, question. So how do you know whether you're drifting in neutral? Because a lot of people don't realize they are drifting in neutral. And so as a result, if they don't realize it, then they can't also realize that there is a problem, or that they're behind, or that they're not on the set course that God has established for their life. The first one reason, and there are many reasons to tell whether or not you're drifting in neutral, but here is one that I have identified. If you're still in the same place you were last year, it's possible that you're drifting in neutral. Let's give some examples of being in the same place you were last year. I'm trying to come up with issues that young people usually deal with. Let's say a bad or toxic relationship. If you're still in a bad or toxic relationship and it's been a year, then that could be a sign that you're drifting in neutral, because when you're drifting in neutral, you're not in gear. You're just drifting along, floating and wandering along, not taking control of the situation. You're just letting the situation happen to you. Another way you can tell if you're drifting in neutral, you haven't accomplished anything significant within the last year. What have you done in the last year that you feel is worthy of some sort of praise or recognition? Or are you just still talking about what you're going to do? Now, we know every year at the first of the year, people make New Year's resolutions. They declare what it is they're going to accomplish for that year. And then if they're not careful, if they don't follow up and begin to come up with a way to accomplish those things and a way to hold themselves accountable, when that next year comes around, they'll be in the same place, and that goal will not have been accomplished. And so if you're still talking about the same thing you were talking about accomplishing last year, that's an indication that you are possibly drifting in neutral. Okay, another example, if you're still dealing with the same problems you were dealing with last year, that could be an indication that you're drifting in neutral. Excuse me. Because, again, drifting in neutral is letting life happen to you and not taking control over life by putting your boat in gear and making a move, figuring out where it is you want to go, what you want to do. Another way to determine if you're still drifting in neutral, you keep getting the same old constructive criticism from your parents, your mentors, or other adults that you value, you respect, and you love. If they keep telling you the same thing or criticizing you on the same thing, then it's because they see that you still have not grown or developed to the place that they've been trying to encourage you and motivate you to stretch towards. Another way that you can tell if you're drifting in neutral, do you feel lost? Do you feel unfulfilled? Do you feel like, wow, I'm just not doing nothing? I look around and my college friends, they know what they want to do, and they're going ahead and pursuing it, and they're making things happen. But when I look at myself, I feel so unfulfilled. I feel like I'm just standing here. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know where I want to go in 5 years. I just feel lost. That's a sign that you're drifting. Because when you're drifting, it is a feeling of feeling lost, because you're out here, just picture it, you're out here in this ocean, in this boat, and it's just drifting. You don't see land anywhere. You don't see any trees. You don't see any other boats to come and rescue you. All you see is this water everywhere you look. And that can be a bad feeling. And it can be a feeling that makes you feel sad inside, because your situation looks hopeless. And you're thinking, how am I going to get out of this body of water? And so, but the first thing is you got to realize and identify and admit that you're drifting in neutral. Because if you don't know you're drifting in neutral, then how are you going to be able to get help and to begin to change your situation? And the third point of tonight's topic is, okay, so now we know how one ends up drifting in neutral. We've talked about how to know whether or not you're drifting in neutral. Okay, and then the third thing is, so how do we stop drifting in neutral? Because this is important if we're going to make any changes. My challenge to you tonight is that if you're drifting in neutral, don't do it any longer. And so, how do you do that? Some of you may be thinking, well, Keila, how do you do that? I'm 18, I'm 19, I'm 20, and I know what I want to do, but I don't really know how to get there. The first thing you do to stop drifting in neutral, you've got to decide where you want to go. A lot of young people think it's useless coming up with goals, But if you don't come up with a goal of what you want to do, how are you ever going to get there? The first thing you have to do is decide where you want to go. And don't come up with something too easy either. Come up with something that you really believe that you're capable of doing. Because you need something that both challenges you and something that inspires you. You don't want something so easy until you don't even get any challenge out of it. But you want something that's realistic, and you want something that's going to challenge you to a certain extent. Because I'm telling you, once you fulfill it and accomplish that goal, you are going to feel so good about yourself to look back and see how far you have come. So decide and see where you want to go, and see it in your mind. You got to see it. Write it down, see it in your mind, picture it in your mind, And then just, I don't care how ridiculous you may think it is or how impossible you think it is, go for it. Some of you may have seen on my Facebook page, I shared a story about over the holidays, my family and I had taken a photograph. And all these years, 25 years later, I looked at this photograph of me, my husband, my two daughters, and it's like the Lord brought back to my remembrance of a moment of me being in a health class in high school. And on this particular day, my health teacher asked us all to take out our health books and find a picture in that book that reflected something that we wanted in our future. Well, I went through the book and found I wanted a healthy and happy family, marriage, and children. And so I found a picture of this husband and wife, and they had two children. They was happy and smiling, and they just looked healthy, like they had a healthy family life. And that's the picture I picked, and we all had to go through and show him the picture we picked and why. And so this past weekend, when I looked at the photograph that we had actually taken, it's like, wow, it actually came to pass. I got what I saw. I saw it. I pointed it out. It was a goal. It was my desire. And now I possess it. And God blessed me to manifest it. Not only, and it didn't take long because, I graduated from high school in the month of May. And then in the month of August, I was married. And 2 years later, I had my first child. And so God did it, but it was according to what I saw. And so that's why I tell you the first step in to stop drifting in neutral, you got to decide where you want to go. You got to see it. I don't care how impossible it seems. I don't care if you don't know how you're going to get it done. Because a lot of times we can come up with a goal, but then when we try to figure out the steps in the process to get there, they can be discouraging. And if we don't know how to get there, then we give up on it. Don't worry about the details. You may not know all the details. All you need to do at this point is figure out what it is you want to do in the next 5 years, in the next year, and then begin to develop a plan for that. So the next step is, the first step is, I said, decide where you want to go and see it. The second step, research, map out how to get there. If you want to be in the music business, then you need to start researching it, mapping it out, going to functions and workshops on the music business. The internet is so wonderful. It will tell you everything you need to know, teach you everything you know, and if you can't read, they got videos that you can watch to teach you how to do what it is you need to do. You can begin to mentor and network with folks that are in the industry that you're trying to get in. Research it and map it out. And then you begin to develop an ideal of the steps it takes to get there. If you want to get anywhere traveling-wise, let's say from here, from wherever you live to Chicago, you've got to research. Then you got to map it out. Type in the address in your phone, and the phone begins to give you directions and tell you how long it's going to take, how much gas, the different restaurants along the way. And that's how you begin to work on accomplishing the first step, which is decide where you want to go, and then you map and research it out. You count up the cost. This is a biggie. A lot of young people that I talk to, they can do step one, they can do step two, but counting up the cost. Sometimes we overlook that, and then when we overlook it in the process of trying to accomplish the goal, we end up getting discouraged because we're like, man, I didn't count up the cost. To figure out, estimate, how much time is it going to take from you to accomplish this goal? How much money is it going to cost you? How much of your energy and effort and mind power is it going to cost you to accomplish this thing? There will be some unknowns as well. I want to warn you on that. Always plan for the unexpected. Leave room in there for the unexpected, because there will be something to pop up that you did not recognize or realize would take place. But always count up the cost, because if you don't count up the cost, once the cost begins to hit you, if you're not prepared for it, it will cause you to get discouraged and give up on getting out of neutral. And the last thing, after you figure all that out, then you need to just get in drive and go. Get that vehicle, get your boat, get your life in gear, drive to it and go. You've done the work. You decided where you want to go. You mapped it out. You researched it. You counted the cost. And so now it's time to just get on it and begin to work it out step by step, day by day. Every day that you wake up, you should be working on your goal. You should be planning. What's the next step? What's the next strategy? Making connections, reading books, reading magazines, reading blogs. You've got to feed that goal every day. And every day that you read something, or every day that you feed your goal, then it keeps you motivated and inspired about accomplishing it. So, we've talked about what drifting is, what neutral means. We've talked about how does one end up drifting in neutral. We've talked about how to know whether you are drifting in neutral. And I've given you a few steps on how to stop drifting in neutral. All right, so today we're going to end with an assignment because if you're going to accomplish anything, you've always got to set a goal. You got to set deadlines, and you got to hold yourself accountable to make sure that you're on course, because if you don't, you'll be in the same place again next year, and we don't want that. We want to drift out of neutral. So your assignment for this week is, if you don't already have one, I want you to put together a vision board. And if you don't know what a vision board is a board that you place pictures and words that reflect what you desire in your future. I'm going to do the same thing to you guys that my health teacher did to me 25 years ago. He taught me, whether I realize it or not, the power of having a vision for yourself or seeing things in your future for your life. So if you don't know how to do a vision board, you can Google vision boards, and you will see all kind of examples of how to do it. And once you complete your vision board, I want you to post it up in a place in your house or in your office where you can look at it every day. Every day you go by this particular spot in your house, you see a vision board, and it keeps you reminded of what your vision is. It keeps you reminded of what it is that you believe you deserve and what you believe you're worthy of having. Because if we don't have a dream, we'll perish. And a lot of the young people are perishing simply because they do not have a vision or dream for their life. And if you don't have a vision or dream for your life, something that's healthy and good, that's showing you that you can have a better life, you can do better in your life, then you will drift in neutral and end up getting connected with the wrong people, the wrong lifestyle, and then a lot of cases it ends up speeding up your death because you're with the wrong people doing the wrong thing. And I think it's time out for that. And so I've committed and dedicated myself to do my little part to try to encourage and reach out and provide some sort of guidance, assistance, and be a resource to young adults so that you guys can be successful and achieve your goals and dreams. Because as I look back over my life, some of the things that I've accomplished, that it once was a dream. And now, I'm walking in the reality of those dreams. And it was because of me learning how to have a vision for myself and then moving out and activating myself to accomplish that dream. It's not always easy. The greater the vision, the greater the work that's involved in it. But if you stay with it, you will reap the harvest and the reward of your labor. So do that for me, and then I want to see, you can give me feedback. You can email me or respond to me on Facebook and Twitter and let me know how your vision boards went. I've done that with my two daughters. My Miracle, she was 6 at the time when we did her first vision board, and she has it in her room now so that she can see it every day. And whether she realizes it or not, every day she's looking at it, and it's getting implanted into her consciousness of what it is that she sees for herself. My daughter Whitney has done the same thing. I have my own vision board because it works. It keeps you motivated and encouraged, and it keeps you focused. So do it and let me know how it worked out for you. All right. This has been a Teachable Life Moment with Keila Bryson, where it is absolutely imperative that you no longer live, I always say like The Walking Dead. We love watching The Walking Dead, but we don't want you to be The Walking Dead. We want you to live lives because life is too short to be walking around dead. So live life. Now, if you would like to connect with me, you can do so. I'm on Facebook at Keela Bryson, Teachable Life Moments, LLC, and I'm on Twitter at Keeler Savant, or you can visit me on my website, which is KeelerBryson.com. All right. Thank you guys for calling in tonight, and we will meet up again next Monday night at the same time. Have a blessed week.